we truly have a special treat today. With us, we have the soul-influenced indie pop band Fitz and The Tantrums. Thank you so much again for joining us. I know
Thanks for having us.
Yes. I know that you guys have been a band for 10 years now, and you have many musical accomplishments together, including your most recent release, All of It Feels, which is full of gems, by the way. I've been jamming out to that like all week. I love it. We know that Fitz is in the parent-teacher conference today, and will hopefully be joining us at some point during the conversation. But we're so happy to have you guys to represent.
Thank you.
We're excited to dig into the creative processes and learn a little bit more about your inspiration and your journeys individually and collectively. So let's get started by having everyone introduce themselves and, tell us your role in the band and sort of how you ended up becoming a member of Fitz and The Tantrums. We can start with Jeremy.
God. Yes, I'm Jeremy. I play keyboards in case anyone hadn't seen it. And yeah, man, I play keyboards in the band. I got in the band because I was in a band with John Wicks, actually, just at this club called Bardot, and the band was hadn't really formed yet, and I don't know. Fitz had been working with John. They pulled me in, and that was how I jumped into this particular situation.
Oh, cool. What about you, James?
Yeah, I'm James King, and I play saxophone and a bunch of other things on stage, keys and guitar, and sing, jump around. I knew most of these guys and gal before we formed Fitz and The Tantrums, just from playing around LA in different band situations. And when we all came together, it just felt like, we had all known each other, because we had.
We had.
And 10 years on, it's just strength to strength, and I'm glad to still be making music with these guys and answer any of your questions.
Awesome. John, what about you?
Hey, I'm John Wicks. I'm the drummer, and I met Fitz through actually a mutual friend, a guy named Tay Strathairn, who was a keyboard player that I had done some work with. And I had been doing some music kind of similar to what Fitz was doing in the beginning, and so Tay thought I'd be an appropriate call for it. And originally it was just for a couple club gigs around LA, and it just caught fire really quick and ended up being a band. And
wow.
It's been 10 years.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Noelle.
Me. Hi.
Holding it down for the women in the band.
I am the lone female in this group. I'm Noelle Skaggs. I am the co-lead vocalist of the band, and actually met Fitz through James King, and had known about all of the other guys through just kind of our LA, community of wonderful musicians that have all kind of played together and done wonderful things together. Yeah, so it was just like they said, just kind of walking into the space and being in a room with musicians that had chops, which makes your job that much easier,
right.
Coming in, because you never really know what's the energy is going to be like, if, people are going to vibe or not. So this was just one of those situations where everybody was already vibing, and, the music experience was great, and we kind of just, stuck with it.
Wow, I love that. And last but not least, Joe.
I'm Joe Carnes. I'm the bass player in the band, and I came into the band. I was actually brought in originally just to cover some gigs for our original bass player, Ethan Phillips, who's a fabulous bass player. And just as we do, we were all just kind of session players around, and so we were able to trade off and like, hey, can you cover this gig for me? I got another thing over here. And my first gig with the band was like 6 months in, so it was at a tiny club in LA. So I've been there in the dirt with these guys for a long time. And then eventually it just Ethan was involved in some other things that required his attention, and they asked me to join right when the first record was just about to come out. And I jumped at the chance because it's I love playing with these guys, and it was also a kind of music that I really wanted to make, really joyful, positive music that really gets people out of the day to day and into celebration, because I was doing a lot of other beautiful music that I really enjoyed, but it was more kind of art rock, you know, a little bit more moody and brooding, and it's just such a pleasure to be able to join this band and make this kind of music and you know, help people celebrate.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, that celebratory vibe is, I mean, it's ever present. And that's what I love the most. It's so energetic. It just lifts you. And I just really appreciate that, you know. So let's just get into a little bit like who or what experiences have inspired your work? You guys can pick who starts, or I'll pick someone.
Anybody can jump in.
Anybody jump in, yeah.
Anybody jump in. I like when the boys go first, so you guys go first, and then I'll swing in. Jeremy.
I'll jump in. Yeah, I'll say something. It's just, I mean, it's kind of everything and anything. Life is a big influence, you know, just, you know, whatever's going on emotionally for you is a big influence. I mean, there's musical influences, obviously, of, you know, everything from, you know, Stax Motown types of sounds to, you know, all of our, you know, love of, you know, 80s synth pop and things like that. But then also anything modern and anything outside the box that's really trying to say something that, you know, hasn't been heard before. You know, there's, I mean, there's, you know, James and John in particular really go down a wonderful wormhole with that kind of search.
Yeah, I can speak to that too. And I've got another box here open with all the questions that are coming in. Are great questions. To address Nancy and Michaela over there who are asking about music training and what do you do when an idea pops into your head. It kind of ties into all of what we're talking about right now. Is that yeah, John and I went all the way through formal training in music school and ended up with, you know, degrees in music performance, things like that. But every one of us here in the band, no matter what their level of formal training is, can identify with how they clicked with music in the beginning and the effect that it's had on our lives ever since. So when I was, you know, a kid in school band, I remember taking that feeling of playing in band class with me through all the other classes in the day. You know, I was that kid banging on the desk and humming melodies, and that's just,
That was you, huh?
I think all five of us here can relate in that we bring every little piece of life that happens throughout the day into our music and vice versa. The music informs what we do. And so whether, you know, that means when we're on a tour now, you know, we're out, you know, finding coffee or food or whatever we're doing, we're thinking about what the night's going to be and the music is playing in our head. So that's just a constant. When you live a musical life, whether that means you are a professional musician or an amateur musician, or you just live your life thinking about the music that you love, you know, can't wait to spin records at the end of the day. It's just a way of being and relating to the world.
I love that. It's just a constant. It's like in your being. I love that.
Yeah.
Noel, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, you know, definitely for me, kind of growing up with my music experience was really diving in. I was fortunate enough to, you know, have a father that was a DJ in the 70s. So I had access to a lot of really amazing, you know, classic records. You know, I grew up on P-Funk stuff. I grew up with, you know, Temptations and the Spinners and the Miracles and Tina Marie and the Pointer Sisters. But then also, you know, my journey through my adolescence with, you know, trading music off with my friends, I was, you know, influenced by, you know, rock bands like Pink Floyd and then Metallica or, you know, Tool. You know, I was listening to a lot of, you know, various things. And, you know, what I found for me, I really related to the most because, you know, I grew up in the 90s was hip hop. You know, Tupac had a major influence on me. I remember the first time hearing Brenda's Got a Baby, which, you know, was not a song that my mom was very, very keen on me listening to, but, you know, the words and, you know, seeing that music video for the first time, I wasn't really allowed to watch a lot of television and stuff like that, but like that really had an impact on me because it really kind of, you know, narrated the experience of community. and what, especially as an African American, growing up in Los Angeles, what that really looked like, and to actually see that on MTV, and to have this force that Tupac was with his lyricism really impacted me as a songwriter. That was something that I brought into my songwriting. I was always in a book. I was either writing down my favorite songs that I love to sing, from my dad's collection of records, or things I was hearing on the radio, the mixtapes I was making. I was constantly playlisting. I was constantly singing in my room every single day. And when I finally decided to kind of take it into the world, it was the experience of like hopping on a stage and singing a cappella for the first time, and not even really knowing if I had a voice. It was just really diving into things. And I think because, I grew up, I have a brother, but he grew up with my grandmother, but me kind of like growing up alone really kind of forced that habit on me, because that's where I really found my foundation, and I found my voice, and I was able to like make friends, and not be the person that everybody bullied all the time, because I had this, all of a sudden I had this talent everybody was, was looking at.
Wow.
And, I find that that's kind of carried on throughout my career path, all of these influences, and, the things that kind of pushed me to wanting to be a songwriter, wanting to be a performer. These were all of the music influences that I found just digging and diving in, and, allowing that experience to influence me and my path. So that's my long story short.
No, that's amazing. I love that point. I love that point about the bullying and music sort of being a catalyst to prevent you, or for sort of to socially, get you out of these precarious situations possibly. Like that's really cool. Jeremy.
Yes. It's funny. I was just very shy when I was a kid. I didn't really have the social skills, and I don't know, I kind of got into music ironically to like get away from people. Like I was the guy that in school, instead of taking lunch break with everybody, I'd go into the piano room and just be isolated, because I didn't know how to like be around people. I was just scared.
Wow.
I don't know. And ironically, that led to what I do now, which is kind of funny. I just when I was a kid, I saw Purple Rain, and I got into Prince, and I suddenly wanted to be a guy on stage playing keyboards, and just doing like that kind of music, just anything with like soul. And that was sort of what started me wanting to even ever be in a band. But the first time I ever even went into a club, I wasn't even playing in the band. I had to set up somebody else's keyboards, and I like spent the whole night in the bathroom because I was so scared, so shy. But anyway, it's funny because that led to like, I don't know, you can, in terms of music, you can look at your whole life's arc. I've been doing this, I guess professionally, quote unquote, since I was like 20, 25, 26. So like everything that happens in your life is informed by this experience you've had, like on the road, and the different bands you've been with, and the people you played with, and the things that have happened. And it's just all pervasive, the whole experience.
Yeah.
Did that answer any questions?
No, it definitely. And then John.
So I grew up in a military family, and we moved around a lot, like every 3 to 5 years. One of the places we lived was New Orleans, and that's where it started. My mom taking me to Mardi Gras and taking me to jazz funerals. Sounds morbid, but in New Orleans, funerals
sounds great.
So, yeah, fun. But the music there is all about the drums, and so she and thankfully I had a really enthusiastic mom who took me to everything and was super into jazz music. Her favorite piano player was Ahmad Jamal, and so she turned me on to him at a really early age, and then I just got obsessed with jazz music. And then later I started to realize that all the records I was listening to were being sampled for hip hop records. So I started getting heavily into hip hop and tracing the samples back. And then as a result, my record collection just built and built and built, because I would look at what they sampled, and then I'd go to the record store and buy records that they sampled. And so kind of working backwards that way in a way. But that sort of fueled it. And then when my dad retired from the Navy, we moved up to Seattle, Bainbridge Island, actually, just off Seattle. But I was there in the grunge era. So as a result, I got heavily into punk music and was hearing that all over. And that definitely fueled a lot of that, combined with my dad's military background, sort of fueled a lot of, I would say, drive that I have. Punk rockers, you know, have a reputation of being DIY, and that music is super driven, and I really related to it in that way. And my dad was kind of the same way, being from a military background. So just I was that guy that always was putting flyers on telephone poles and for every project that I was involved in, and it just eventually I just got tired of starving, and my wife and I decided to move to LA to see if I could make a go of a session career, and thankfully it took a couple years down there, but it paid off finally. So
yeah, clearly.
that's how it all happened. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how all of you guys sort of, in your answers, you know, you drew from experience and then a musical side. We got hip hop, we got punk, we got jazz, and that leads me to my next question. Like, how does that all work in this like jambalaya of you know, inspiration? How does that come together when you guys work together collaboratively? How do the influences?
I mean, you know, every single song has a different wave, and it's interesting that you're asking this because I'm kind of looking in the box of questions as well, and people are asking about, you know, kind of the creative process and what you do, you know, when you have an idea in your head. I would say over the course of the last like 3 or 4 days, and it happens to me often, I'll have a dream about something random. It'd be a very cinematic experience, and with that, often there's this stream of consciousness with lyrics and top lines that happen. And in those situations, it could be 5 in the morning, it could be 4 in the morning, it could be, you know, whatever. It's always constantly early. I grab my phone and I start just writing, you know, allowing the lyrics to kind of just go. Because I find when I don't do that, when I don't, you know, allow that to happen and I put it on paper, it's there and it's gone. And oftentimes those are the songs that end up, you know, being the ones that make the album, or being the ones that, you know, get pitched, or, you know, I release them kind of later on. So I've, you know, really allowed myself to let that happen, you know, even though I should be sleeping at that hour. I don't have kids, you know what I mean? Like, there's no reason to be up that early in the morning, you know, but I think it's just allowing yourself to have those moments. And sometimes, you know, even if it doesn't have a melody, if you just write it down, and you write it down right away, and then you can just kind of put your phone away and then just kind of sleep on it, I think, you know, it kind of helps build that momentum with your creativity, you know. So for me, that's something that really works, is sitting down and writing it immediately, getting it on tape immediately. And then with like in the band, if, you know, if it's an idea that I really feel kind of like jives with us, I'll send it, you know, I'll send it over to Fitz, or I'll, you know, send it to Jeremy, see if we can kind of like hash it out. With our song creativity, it's, you know, it's very different. We've been, you know, in earlier stages of the band, we wrote every single song together, you know, like that was like the process. And as we kind of, you know, moved around, I moved to Nashville, you know, we kind of like started writing with, you know, other individuals, and that kind of really built the program for, you know, where our records have collectively gone. And it's been an interesting experience, just, you know, having that outside party looking into our experience and really helping us kind of jump out of our boxes and expand our horizons and stuff. So, you know, we're just going with what really kind of works for us. You know, it's a family. There's 6 of us. We all have these amazing like ideas and stuff like that. And not every idea makes it on the table, you know? So it's, you know, just kind of like a coordinated effort, seeing what works and just running with it.
it's sort of like a process. Everybody kind of has their own individual process, and then you guys come together and see what sticks, sort of.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to like jump in and add to that?
Yeah, I mean that's
Um,
oh, go for it, James.
Oh, I was just gonna say, even if a song is done, quote unquote, like, and recorded and a demo is made, you always make little discoveries when you're in rehearsals, about to go on tour too. And you find out what's possible with 6 people live on stage. Sometimes that can be very different than what's on the record. So we have to draw upon all of our musicality and all the experience that we bring to that, to make it sound like what it sounds like on stage. But in each stage, the writing, the demoing, the rehearsing and recording, those are all different, just building blocks to get to the same thing.
Yeah,
Got it.
I was just gonna say that when it comes to creating and things like that, it's pretty much any possible permutation of how it can go down is how we have done it throughout our career in different times. Yeah, because it can start with whatever. It starts, like Noelle was saying, she wakes up, she has a dream, she has some melody or something, and she grabs it. I'll go outside and take a walk, and just the rhythm of my walking outside will start to, all of a sudden, I'll just get into whatever that rhythm is, and that rhythm starts to inform whatever, just some kind of melody. I just start singing the thing, or you're listening to some music, and you're like, oh, that's really fun. And then all of a sudden, you're starting to write something else. You can write a riff. First, it can come down to every possible way. We've written songs, throughout our career in, different clumps of us. We've done a few of them where we've actually just gotten in a room and jammed it out, and that's turned into a song. So yeah, there's so many facets to how you can actually create, and I think that speaks to the fact that music and creativity should not have that many rules. There are little rules or songwriting rules that you can go for pop writing, that can kind of help you, there's little catchphrases and things like that that can really help propel a writing process. But I think music really should not have any rules. And you should be able to do and create however it comes out, and grab it in the moment and put it on your phone right away, like Noelle was saying.
Yeah, I think that is interesting, like to circle back, it's like, it's so a part of your being. It seems like that you almost, as musicians and as artists, you hear it, like you said, in the way you're walking, or like in nature. Like, I think those are like the cool things that I hear a lot from artists in general, but from you guys, like just where it can just come from. You hear things differently than maybe someone who isn't an artist creating. And I think that's so cool what you said about the rhythm in your walk. We have another question from Tina. What is the best way to find musicians that have similar interests to form a band?
Just put an ad out in the recycler, man. No. Some old school stuff.
No, that's funny because it's kind of true. When I first moved to LA, I didn't know anybody, and it was pretty intimidating to say the least. So I just looked on Craigslist, and I saw there was a punk band looking for a drummer, and they listed the influences, Ramones and stuff like that, and I was like, that sounds cool. And they were in Venice, where I lived. So I called them up, and see, this is how this stuff works. Like, you never know. You could be playing for like 2 people, 2 drunks at a bar, and then the rest of the place is empty. But those 2 drunks at the bar might be the producers that are going to make or break your career. And this was a perfect example of that. The guys in the band I was in, one of them was an engineer at a jingle studio, and literally that was 3 blocks from my house. So when I went in and nailed the audition, suddenly he's recommending me to come in and play for jingles, which literally paid our rent, So I guess the moral of the story is don't leave any stone unturned, and be vocal about what you're into, because chances are that person sitting next to you is probably into the same thing. Or even cooler, they might not be, and you guys can work something out that's truly original, you know. I would just say put it out there, you know. I guess it's a cliche to put things out in the universe and they come back to you, but if you speak about what you're into, chances are you're going to find somebody that is. It sounds too simple, but it really is just that simple, I think.
Yeah, and it's
I
also
agree.
just about, oh, sorry to interrupt.
No,
I was
no.
going to say, just go on what John was saying. Yes, I mean, it's also, yeah, just getting into pockets of like musicians and scenes. I mean, it's been a while since I've been like out of the club or whatever, but like, you know, back in the day, for starting, I think probably you guys can all agree with this. You just start out just playing with as many people as you can, meeting as many people as you can, not saying no to anything, going to every jam session and stuff like that. Just sort of, you just sort of end up gravitating towards the people that you've got something in common with. And, you know, you just, once you get into this sort of pocket, it leads to other pockets once you make that leap.
Yeah. What was the moment that for you guys where you guys knew like, oh, this is really a thing, like this is real, like you guys found that synergy? Like, can
Within the
anyone
band,
speak to that?
you mean
In the
As a
band?
band, as a
yeah.
band.
Oh, it was a
We,
band.
I think we kept, I think it was really, we kept getting gigs, you know, people,
Okay.
I'm not kidding. We kept
No,
getting
it's true.
gigs.
The people decided.
People kept calling, people kept
Oh,
showing
wow.
up. Every show we did, we'd have more people there. Then, you know,
Oh,
I think
amazing.
the thing that really kind of broke us into a wider audience was when we had the opportunity of doing Morning Becomes Eclectic, which was something very unusual for our period of being a band, because at that time we had only had an EP out. We didn't even have a full record yet, and that wasn't anything that they had normally done, was invite a band to come play that didn't have a full length record that was either going to be released or, you know, already out.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And
but
that people should know that's KCRW in LA. That's a big
KCRW. Yeah,
case
NPR station.
station.
Yeah, so, you know, for us, I think that really, us doing that kind of spread us in areas that we wouldn't have been able to touch at, you know, at that time. So it was just kind of one of those moments that really, really helped our career path keep flowing. And I think, you know, watching that happen and seeing the momentum is really what kind of kept us in. And
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the fact that, you know, we had the energy that we had together, you know, like I couldn't say it anymore. Playing with these guys every single day makes you spoiled, and you know that, and it goes beyond, you know, who they are as you know, as talent. You know, like John is seriously, and I tell him all the time, he is literally my favorite drummer to play with. I play tambourine.
Awesome.
You know,
Thank you.
the second is my old friend Chris Taylor, who was in my former band. But you know, there's a pocket
Yo,
there.
screw Chris.
Yeah, man. Who's this guy, Chris, man?
Hey, you can't steal all the glory all the time.
Can't talk that way about John Wick.
Him.
Yeah, you know, it's like there's something about rhythm section, and you know, for me, that has always been a driving force. Like I said, like, you know, hip hop was a big thing for me, so that's
Right.
the first thing I'm listening to. I'm listening to the drums, I'm listening to the bass, and I love everything else. Obviously, you know, keyboards is incredible. I wish I played them better. You know, James, I wish I could do half the stuff that James does. You know. But yeah, anyway, getting back to it, you know, just I think watching the momentum and the progression really is what kept us going.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think when you kind of see that, you kind of got to strike while the iron is hot.
Right.
And I'm not to say that anything wasn't easy for us. There were a lot of people that did not believe in us. They did not, you know, think that our music was going to make it past, you know, our local, you know, stations or whatever, like, you know, whatever. They didn't think that we would be a worldwide name. So they passed on us, you know, consistently. And it wasn't until we did our what may have been our last show at South by Southwest in Austin. Might have been. Thanks, grammar corrector.
Hey, man.
You know, might have been our last show in Austin, turned out to be our first record deal with an independent label that, you know, couldn't deny the fact that they saw talent on that stage, and, you know, people wanted more of it. So had it, you know, a lot of opportunities came our way that I don't think would have happened had we stopped.
Right. Yeah. See, it's always the what,
Because
yeah.
it's how you're going to pay the bills.
Yeah.
You know, you get to that stage in your life where you got to pay your rent, and how am I going to, you know, work and, you know, feed my craft at the same time? When is this going to happen? For every single no out there, there's a yes waiting.
Well,
and how does that affect your creative process? How does rejection, did it have any effect? Or
If it's not bettering you as an artist in some way, if rejection or, you know, somebody saying they don't like it, or, you know, giving you, even if it's not they don't like it, they're just kind of giving you technical pointers, people that, you know, maybe doing this all the time. I think if it doesn't better you as an artist, and if it doesn't better you as a person that's going to do what you need to do in order to make your dream come to life, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, and also
you really in the same place.
You really need to know, like, there's a difference. Like when you're writing a song, I'm sure we've all had this experience where you're writing a song and nobody's around, and then somebody comes into the room, like your significant other or your friend or whatever, and there's that moment of, like, at least for me, there's that moment of either you've got to hear the song right now, I got to play this for you right now, it's amazing, or they walk in and you're like, all right, before I play the song, and you give all these disclaimers, it's not, the drums aren't there yet, and blah blah blah, and like, you sort of know them. At least for me, I know the minute I get out of my head, if I really made something that was authentic, that I actually know in my heart, at least for me, is good, or if I did it, if you do it inauthentically and you're sort of trying to, like, let's say, chase a sound or make something that sounds like something else, and then you get that whole thing. So anyway, I can't even remember what the hell I was talking about. I've had like 25 coffees.
It's okay. We have a question from the audience. What impacted the change in sonic direction from picking up pieces to more than just a dream?
Collaboration, not being afraid to, you know, get outside the box. I think that was something that we all kind of focused on, and it's scary to do that. It's scary to jump out of what you think made you popular. You know what I mean?
That's true.
It's really easy to make the same record 50 times. And at some point, when you're doing that, people stop listening because, you know, you're not really growing. You're kind of staying in the same place. I think for us, we really wanted to show that we aren't just a one-trick pony. You know, we have a lot of different experience that drives our creativity. We have a lot of inspirations that shine through our music. And at the end of the day, like, it's still all six of us. We still have the sound. Nobody is going to, you know, be able to fill the shoes. And I don't say that lightly. Nobody is able to really fill the shoes of anybody else in this band. We are a unit, you know.
Right. What impact does, like, commercial, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but I just want, you know, maybe John or James, or what impact does the commercialism in the media play in your work and the creation of your work? You know, does it sometimes get in your head, or is there something a tactic you use to not let it get in your head? John, maybe you can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess if I'm going to be completely honest, that's probably what I resist the most, is commercialism. But I've been humbled several times to know that had my battle against that won out, I wouldn't own this house that I'm in, and I wouldn't be afforded the lifestyle that I live. You know, for better or for worse. I mean, for better for me, like, I love what I have for my family, and I'm able to provide. But does it keep me up at night? Yeah, it does sometimes. It really does. I suffer from severe punk rock and jazzer guilt.
Jazzer guilt.
It's
jazzer guilt. Yeah. I mean, look, it's a real thing. You know, I mean, I grew up in an environment in Seattle in the 90s, just prior to when grunge took over. It was a really small town vibe. It was very insular. Everyone knew each other. and it, but it was amazing because there was no rules. Whatever you were doing, cool. That's great. You may only have 5 people at your show, but who cares? You know, I mean, that's what it was about. And I honestly think that that's the type of environment that creates a new movement of music, which I don't really think we've had a new movement of music, except maybe the electronic music movement since grunge. So I struggle with it every day. I think people now, music cannot get any more perfect than it is now. Everything is literally perfect on a grid. And now it's gotten so perfect that people are trying to make it intentionally unperfect. So make it perfectly unperfect. And it's crazy. So I think that people are now craving something more real, something less on the grid, something that is more raw. Humanity, exactly. And so I struggle with it, and but I have to believe that the pendulum will swing the other way, and I think I'm starting to see it. So yeah. Anyways, that's my thing. It's a struggle, a daily struggle with me.
I have 2 thoughts about that John, you reminded me of. One is the Facebook game that's been going around where everyone lists their 10 favorite albums, and you know, I'm digging way deep into childhood and listing records that I haven't listened to in years, and it's making me think a lot about musical literacy in the general public. It used to be a lot greater. Of course, you had kids coming up studying music in school. It was compulsory. You would be in a band, you would sing, you would do something. And a lot more people were taking piano lessons and drum lessons and knew, you know, the theory and the ins and outs of what makes a song and what makes it good. That's one thought I had. The other thought is, you know, to the question about what prompted the change in direction for our band, is that we all brought these different influences to the band from the very beginning. You know, if you make a Venn diagram of all of our influences, there's a lot of crossover there. Of course, we listen to the same stuff, but there's stuff that, you know, the other 5 members will listen to that I might not be into, and vice versa. So when we made the first record, you have to remember it was 2010, around beginning of the decade, and there were a lot of people referencing the same touch points of, you know, that 60s sound, that early Motown stack sound, which is great. Everyone should be into that. But we found ourselves in a playing field of like, you know, the league of blue-eyed soul bands and, you know, stuff like that. And we realized that we had all these other influences to bring to the table, not to negate those musical qualities that put us where we were at, but also to bring, you know, maybe the old K-Rock FM and all the old things that we came up listening to the table. And that just opened a whole can of worms, with Jeremy being a synth expert and John having all these punk influences and all the things that we're all into. Why not bring those things into the music that you're already doing?
Right. Cool. Joe, do you have anything to add to that?
Anything to add to that? Yeah, well, I think there's the one thing. I know that there's a challenge that we set for ourselves as a band on that first record, which was no guitar. Only going to make this music with the 6 of us, which means they were, you know, bass, drums, 1 saxophone, keyboards, which meant it was only an organ and a piano. You could have different sounds of those, but that was it. Drums, tambourine, and basically 2 vocalists. Sometimes we would join in with some extra vocals, but we took a lot of pride in that in the beginning of the, especially on that whole promoting, picking up the pieces. And I think we took that minimalism and that approach about as far as we could, and we milked it for everything it was worth, and it really made us who we are as a band, I think, in the beginning. But then you're sitting there and you're like, oh, you start craving other tones and other textures. Since, you know, I mean, we all love just synthesizer sounds so much as well. And there were, you know, even guitars, you know, now we, you know, have some guitar on there. We, you know, it's really fun to create with a set of parameters. And then it's also fun to take those parameters away and say, let's make what the song needs.
Right.
And I think that's what really started to open it up on More Than Just a Dream, and then continued from there on, of just being able to go like, what does this song need? Instead of trying to, you know, set rules for ourselves.
Right. You make the rules and then you break them. You make the rules to break them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just touching on that, you guys are all, you know, obviously instrumentalists. This is actually a question from the audience from Michael Norton. Do you think it's possible to be a songwriter lyricist without being able to play an instrument, or is it a necessity?
I just actually answered privately to him, but it's a good one to, because I wanted to make, that's an important question. And I think it's one that we should address. And what I told them privately was that if you want to communicate with the musicians that you are playing with or aspire to play with, and you need to communicate your wants and needs for your song, and you want it to communicate it in a short amount of time and be able to hear what you're hearing in your head, it's important to have a very base knowledge of piano or guitar. I think if you only learn, like, if you only learn major and minor chords and major and minor scales and know what those mean, you're good, like, for the most part. I think if you can just express what you'd like to hear in major and minor chord terms, from my experience in pop music, that type of stuff, you've got a lot of bases covered. And seriously, it does not take that much effort to learn just those things, just those. Of course, you should go deeper. Yeah, absolutely. But at the very least, learn major and minor. And just so you can tell people what chords to play and be able to express yourself. The other guys can speak to it, but that's, as a drummer, I've run into that because I skated in school. In my theory classes, I just barely made it through. And when I got out of school, that's what I ran into more often than not, was just, I couldn't tell the band what I wanted to hear. And so at a certain point I said, screw it, and went back and learned piano. So I would say definitely just learn just a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And I would jump onto that too, just to add everything that John said, but also don't underestimate the power of transcribing your favorite artists. Like who, I mean, you can emulate someone without just being a mimic. And mimicking someone is not what I'm talking about, but take your favorite record, take your favorite, are you into old Beatles songs? Are you into Prince? Are you into, you know, whatever's going on? Take that song and learn it on the piano or the guitar or an instrument as best you can, and the ins and outs of it, and what are they doing here on this chord, what are they doing there. So many things are going to open up to you as a songwriter, that you'll have a language to work with to do the things that you want to do, say the things you want to say. So absolutely dive into recordings deeper than just listening to them.
Right. All right, I'm going to pivot just a little bit, because I know all the women in the audience want to know, what is it like, Noelle, being the only female holding it down in a obviously predominantly, you know, male band?
Predominantly male band. It's you know, it's harder for me to answer this question because I think throughout my entire career as an artist, even, you know, beyond this band, I've worked with mostly men. It is a very male dominated industry. It's
For
changing.
sure.
It's changing, definitely changing. You know, we're seeing more females in tech. We're seeing more, you know, women that are playing drums. We're seeing more women playing bass. We're seeing more women getting involved in instruments that weren't necessarily really popular. You know, we were either the background singer or the lead singer, or, you know what I mean, whatever it is. You know, I think with these changing times and people really being inspired, you know, to play whatever it is they want to play, it's making this shift. And, you know, people are joining bands, they're making bands, they're becoming incredible, you know, session musicians, go-to people, you know, incredible monitor engineers and stuff like that. So I think for me, outside of just being the only female in the band, is actually watching my industry shift, you know, where it's starting to become a lot more balanced. What I love to see more female producers out there, you know, becoming as popular as our male counterparts. Yes, absolutely. So I think, you know, for me, I would love to see that. Love to see more of these, you know, women like Linda Perry giving courses, you know, teaching courses to, you know, young women that aspire to be her, or, you know, even Diane Warren. Diane Warren's an amazing songwriter. She's not a crazy tech, but she's a ridiculous producer.
I mean,
you know what I mean? And you know, like seeing women like that, you know, can really show a wave of women that this is popular. You know, this can happen, and you don't necessarily have to always be in the front. You know what I'm saying? To aspire for your goal. Yeah, you know, and as far as like the guys are concerned, we just have this mutual respect for one another. You know, I do my job. I go on stage. I love to have fun. You know, I know my salt, and I know, and they support me, and that's all you can really ask for. And I think that's all you can really ask for in any band. You know, because at the end of the day, you guys become family and you're friends. And if you can't respect one another, then you're not going to get anywhere. You know,
right.
Or maybe you will. You just won't talk to each other. You'll have millions of hits and never say a word to each other. You know.
Right. We at Music Forward, you know, as you know, we serve the underrepresented and the underserved, and that is our direct mission. So speaking on just social change and social issues, if you could change one aspect of our society through your work, what would it be? Jeremy, you're up.
Oh my God, that's a really simple question to answer, actually.
Okay.
No, I think the answer to so much of everything is empathy. You know, I think music can help with that. I think people need to practice empathy and just try to understand just empathy. We know what empathy is. And I think with music, I mean, there's a big part of making music involves empathy, from what you're hearing and being able to translate it and everything else. But that's the main thing. Is my big answer to all that stuff is empathy.
I love that. I'd like to hear from everyone actually for this question, if possible.
No? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're talking about social issues and things like that. I mean, for me, it's pretty simple. You know, I think climate change is one of the biggest things. If there's anything that we can do as a band to bring awareness and actually bring funding to issues that actually make real world changes, that's my personal number one thing.
Okay, I love that. John?
Someone told me once that the highest form of love is listening. And so I'm a pretty driven, bullheaded person and stubborn, and within my
Okay.
It's simultaneous, like Jeremy and my wife in the other room. Yeah. So I try to remind myself of that shortcoming, that sometimes I'm not the best listener. So if I could change one thing, it would be what I want to change in myself, which is be a better listener. And as a result, you are giving the highest form of love.
I love that. I love that. James?
Man, everyone took all my answers already. No, I would just build on everything that they've said. Step outside of your comfort zone. Listening as a social practice and a relationship kind of practice. Yes, but also listening to the great minds and the great art that's out there already. A lot of people are just kind of like in their algorithm directed taste bubble that someone wrote a question here just now about crate digging and record shopping, and I mean it used to be so much more fun to discover new music and new things and new ideas than just sitting on a screen and saying, well, this person said that, what's the other 10 people who think like that say? You know what I mean?
Right.
Social media has been a blessing and a curse to our society, I think, and obviously it's getting us through this pandemic, but I would say step outside and crack a book and listen to a record that you've never heard of before, because what we need are new ideas that are just sitting in front of our faces being ignored.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
I can't compete with that.
yeah, no, I definitely agree with all of the guys. Empathy, is definitely important. I would also say just the dialogue of diversity. We need to have a lot more understanding of cultural understanding. I would like to see definitely more of that happening in the world, because I feel like a lot of roadblocks that we hit socially have everything to do with our complexions and not who we are as human beings. And I'd love to see, more of that light come to people, whether it's traveling to a place you've never gone before, it can even be just outside of your state. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to fly around the world, but just being exposed to different cultures, different social experiences, it really, really opens your eyes, so I love to see more of that happen with people, especially once we can all get outside and play again.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to say on that note, we thank you so much for being a light, for uplifting, and it seems, I don't know if this is your actual mission, but it seems like your mission is to uplift and inspire the people and be a force and be a light, and that is received. So I thank you for your creations and your contributions to music. And of course, we thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us, sit with our audience. This has been amazing. It's been such a treat. And we hope to see you soon. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody that's asked questions. And, you guys are wonderful. Thanks for watching us and listening to us.
Yeah. And before we...
Oh, no.
Wait,
we lost her.
Audio?
Lost her audio.
We got no audio.
I think they kicked us off.
I'm sorry.
There you are.
My computer does that. There's a ghost in my computer. No, I just want to say to everyone watching, again, thank you so much for those tuning in. Please join us next week for another installment of Industry Sessions, where we'll be discussing digital networking, and we'll be back at our normal time of 2 p.m. next Thursday. Thanks so much, you guys, again, and see you soon.
So much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Peace.